September 19th, 1944, near Arracourt, Lorraine, France. Dawn came slowly over the rolling fields of eastern France. A low, grey fog clung to the ground, thick enough to blur distances and soften sound. Visibility was uneven, clear for 100 yards in one direction, nearly blind in another. The fields were broken by shallow rises, hedgerows, and narrow farm lanes cut deep by years of rain and wagon wheels. It was tank country, but only barely. Along the edge of a beet field, just outside the village of Arracourt, 5 American Sherman tanks sat motionless, engines idling low. Their crews had been awake since before first light. Coffee had gone cold. Radios crackled intermittently with fragments of reports. German armor moving, German armor halted, German armor uncertain. Nothing was clear except this: a counterattack was coming. The tanks belonged to the U.S. 4th Armored Division, part of General George S. Patton's 3rd Army. Only days earlier, Patton's forces had broken out of Normandy and raced east across France at a pace that stunned both sides. Fuel shortages and stretched supply lines had slowed the advance, but the momentum remained. Lorraine was supposed to be a pause, a place to reorganize before pushing toward the German border. Instead, it had become a trap. The men inside the Shermans knew the reputation of their machines. They had heard it from British officers, from captured German soldiers, even from American infantrymen who watched tank duels from foxholes. The M4 Sherman was reliable, easy to maintain, fast to repair, but it was lightly armored and undergunned compared to the newest German tanks. Against Panthers and Tigers, the Sherman was said to be outmatched at every range. German tank crews had a harsher word for it. They called it the Ronson, because they said it lit the first time, every time. The 5 Shermans waited anyway. Each tank carried a crew of 5 men: commander, gunner, loader, driver, assistant driver. Most were in their early 20s. Some had been fighting since Normandy. Others were newer replacements, still learning how combat felt inside a steel box. The tanks were armed with 75mm guns, effective against infantry and older armor, but struggling against the frontal armor of German Panthers. The crews knew the numbers were against them. Intelligence reports suggested elements of the German 5th Panzer Army were regrouping in the area, including units equipped with Panther tanks, machines designed to kill Shermans from well beyond the range at which the Americans could reliably penetrate their armor. Yet the orders were simple: hold the ground, delay the enemy, do not give way unless forced. Shortly after 0800, the fog began to thin. At first, there was only sound, a low mechanical rumble, distant but growing. Then came movement, dark shapes shifting at the edge of visibility, steel silhouettes emerging from the haze. German Panthers advanced cautiously, spread out across the shallow rises, their long 75mm guns probing the fields ahead of them. The German commanders believed they had found an opening. American forces in Lorraine were extended, their lines thin. The terrain favored armor, and the Sherman, by reputation, would not stand long against a Panther assault. What the Germans did not see were the American gunners already sighted in. The 5 Shermans had taken positions during the night, hull down where possible, using slight rises and hedgerows to conceal their lower hulls. Their commanders had walked the ground on foot, measuring distances by pace and memory, marking likely avenues of German approach. They had coordinated fields of fire, overlapping arcs that turned open farmland into a killing zone. At 0847, the 1st Panther crested a low ridge at roughly 800 yards. Inside the lead Sherman, the gunner adjusted his sight, steadying his breathing. He knew the odds. At that range, a frontal shot was unlikely to penetrate. But this was not a frontal shot. The Panther was angling, its side armor briefly exposed as it maneuvered through the uneven ground. "Fire," the commander said. The Sherman recoiled as the 75mm round left the barrel. The shell struck the Panther just behind the turret ring. There was a flash, then smoke. The German tank shuddered, halted, and began to burn. The fog erupted with sound. German guns answered immediately. High-velocity shells tore through hedgerows and earth, throwing soil and debris into the air. One Sherman took a near miss that rocked it violently, its crew momentarily stunned. Another reversed hard into cover as a Panther's shot passed through the space it had occupied seconds earlier. The engagement spread across the field in fragments, brief, violent moments of visibility followed by confusion and noise. The Americans fired quickly, then shifted positions, using smoke rounds and engine noise to confuse German targeting. Tank commanders exposed themselves half out of their hatches despite the danger, scanning for movement, shouting corrections to their gunners. German crews struggled with the fog. Their optics were superior at long range, but the broken terrain and shifting visibility reduced the engagement to short, sudden encounters. Panthers advanced cautiously, stopping to fire, then moving again, each pause giving the Shermans another chance. Within 20 minutes, 2 Panthers were disabled. A third withdrew, trailing smoke, its turret jammed. The remaining German tanks halted, unsure of how many American vehicles they faced. The answer was 5. Inside one Sherman, the loader's hands were blistered from handling hot shells. Sweat ran down his back despite the cool morning. The driver fought the urge to press deeper into his seat as another German round slammed into the ground nearby. The commander kept his voice steady on the intercom, calling ranges, angles, targets, anything to impose order on the chaos. By mid-morning, German infantry began to appear, moving cautiously along the edges of the fields. The Panthers attempted to reposition, but each movement drew fire. The Americans had learned a hard lesson in Normandy: never fight German armor head-on if you could avoid it. Instead, they waited for angles, for mistakes, for moments when steel turned just enough. At 10:30, a Panther attempted to flank the American position using a narrow farm lane. One Sherman shifted to meet it, firing